Hey guys, CJ here. So, the major is happening. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody, by the way. And it's a rather unexpected outcome from the first stage of the major, I will personally say, without going over a majority of the results, as we still have the final day of the 2-2 matches tomorrow. M80 have gone 3-0. Now, the path that they took to get there for that 3-0 was Bait, Paravision, and NRG, their domestic rivals. And that's, in and of itself, is an awesome statement to make, purely because Bait are, perennial Ukrainian major qualifiers and Stage 2 makers in and of themselves. They made Stage 2 earlier today, but to see, them knock down Paravision as well as their domestic rivals in NRG, I think this is genuinely the strongest version of M80 we have potentially ever seen, but with this sort of North American-German fusion, and especially since the addition of Hext, who, I have been a proponent of since his time on EG, Black, Gold, whatever the derivative teams of EG were back when that org still existed within Counter-Strike. It is heartening to see that after this European boot camp that they have had in the lead up to the major, that they are delivering on the highest level. They are dominant. They are winning in a significant degree. And to see them go forward into Stage 2 of the major, I'm hopeful that they could even potentially make Stage 3. We do not know. We still have to look at the field and all the matchups they could potentially have going into the next stage of the major. But, we have Liquid with NAF and, Elige on it. FaZe are still on the edge of elimination right now as I speak. But to see M80, who have, invested in the lesser players, so to speak, of two different regions now, because, Tabson is still on Big, just saying, he outlasted Rain on FaZe, Tabson is still on Big, but Sin is IGLing like a motherfucker over on M80, as well as Slacks, who I believe was on Sprout for a bit, but it could be misremembering. But Slacks is also doing a heck of a job. And then we have our main core of, Lake and Swisher, who are the main pieces that I am mostly focusing on in terms of this, as well as obviously Hext, like I mentioned before. But Hext is someone who I've, like I said, been a long time fan of. But Lake and Swisher, more specifically Swisher, because no offense to him, obviously, as an individual, I've previously stated that I think Swisher is the most replaceable member of this team. But going into the last couple months of his personal performance, Swisher has done a phenomenal job. He has shown a step up in his form, in his ability to preform, and to see them get this sort of already, as sad as it is to say for us as a region, this result in the major in and of itself has historically resulted in NA teams not making it even out of the first round. That's why I picked NRG to go 0-3, because historically, whenever I bet on NA does not deliver. And now, NRG is still 2-2, M80 go 3-0, and we have Liquid still waiting further on. I think that this is going to be a very beneficial major for NA as a region, with all of our players doing the absolute best that they can. But I just wanted to take a moment to appreciate each of these individual performances from M80 across their time at the major so far. Lake and Swisher, Lake specifically being one of the rising talents that we hold up there with JBA, JBA, George, Lake. They were a sort of trio of upcoming talents from the region that we have been excited about for a good amount of time. And to see these guys, Lake putting up a 1.33 for the first stage of the major, them putting up a 13-7 and 13-2 against NRG, a 13-9 against Paravision, and a 13-11 against Bait. Bait, I would say, being the highest quality opponent that they have played at the major. It's heartening to see more than anything else. Specifically going into both sides of this event, the team across the board has just been quite strong. And, if you want me to be critical to some degree, they could upgrade Slacks potentially in the future to see something greater out of this roster. But, you know, we only ever recently got the most recent opera to ever come out of NA, which Zodek, you know, over on NRG has been doing a phenomenal job for an opera of his experience at this level. And he will continue to grow, hopefully, under the NRG banner and eventually one other banner. But JBA is now available. Now, Hexed Lake Swisher. Pretty dang good core for North America. You could swap out Swisher. You could, I would say, Swisher for JBA. Or if you go over to NRG, you could swap out someone for JBA. But that's beside the point. The point is that we have potentially 2 teams going through into the next stage of the major from North America when traditionally we barely even have 1. And that's an awesome thing to see, considering we had such an emotional downturn, let's say, for as of recent within the region. But my hat goes off to you. My non-existent hat goes off to you, boys of M80. I appreciate what you have done, and I cannot wait to see what you will do into the future. I hope everyone has a great Thanksgiving. I'm going to be away, and will do my best to keep up with stuff at the major while I'm away until Sunday. But thankfully, that shouldn't really interfere with the next stage of the major, and I will continue to produce more content going into that beyond what I've done now because I have the time off from work. But have a great rest of your day, everyone. I have been CJ.